Let's take this matter even further. We're now joined by political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. We know that after being at loggerheads over the composition of a government of provincial unity, the DA in Gauteng has opted out. And I suppose, as my colleague Mbalenhle Mthethwa was making reference to, what happens now insofar as the position of the Deputy Speaker at the Legislature in the 7th administration?
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. I think, it's very interesting to see this new development because it's going to complicate quite a number of things. You've got a DA that is part of the National Government of Unity, also part of the Provincial Government of Unity in KZN, now opting to be the official leader in Gauteng. And the biggest question I have, even before we get to the deputy post, is that how are they going to make sure that they don't use the information from the ANC and from the running of government that they're going to get as members of the National Government of Unity and members of the KZN provincial unity to the advantage or to the disadvantage of the other parties that are party to this agreement in Gauteng?
Yeah, and that's a big question, more so as, perhaps get some reaction from you about how we heard Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi emphasizing that these are uncharted waters and that they've had to crisscross various, platforms to eventually reach this agreement. What do you make of the current composition?
Well, I think, the composition is quite interesting. The Gauteng Premier has for a while now kind of had not necessarily run his own race, as it were, but he has had quite a unique take on leadership. We saw him collaborating with the EFF at a time where the ANC wasn't necessarily collaborating with the EFF in the same way outside of Gauteng after the local government elections. And so I'm not surprised that this is the province that now sees itself without a DA, despite the national agreement and the agreement in KZN. And I think they really tried to kind of bring a balance. Very interesting to see that you've got the newest baby, which is Rise Mzansi, getting a ministry. And it's going to be interesting to see how they, take advantage of their first stab at governance and how that is also going to work for government, having, a political party that hasn't been in government before have a literal cabinet post. So these are very much uncharted waters, and it can have very disastrous effects for South Africa, or it can have good effects for South Africa, because at this point everyone is fighting for their supper and no one seems to be secure 100% of their position. My biggest concern is that there seems to be quite a lot of distrust between the ANC and the DA, which is dangerous for us sitting with, the majority of the GNU, or at least the positions of power in the GNU sitting with the DA and the ANC at a national level. And so cracks within this particular relationship would lead to collapse in the government. We've just new things happen in Gauteng, so anything is possible.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anything is possible, more so after hearing Premier Panyaza Lesufi admitting to the fragility of the government when he said that there will be mishaps, there will be misunderstanding, issues that will divide them and some that will bring them together. It's a statement which is quite telling, perhaps, of course, an indication of the things to come in the next 5 years in the country's economic hub. What do you think are some of the big areas to keep a very close eye on as the residents of Gauteng with this composition? Because, it's taken long enough. The squabbles had an impact on service delivery.
Yeah, I think Gauteng is just going through a very difficult patch, having gone through the ups and downs of coalitions in the city of Johannesburg, the drama between the EFF and the ANC in Ebukhuleni, and the lack of government spend in Tshwane by the DA. So you've got a province that has been struggling at a local government level, and of course that trickles down to the provincial level. And this is not a good thing for South Africa, because Gauteng is the biggest economy in South Africa. In fact, it is bigger in size than KZN and the Western Cape put together, plus at least another 5% on top of that. So it's not a small thing when you've got your biggest province sitting in such precarity, sitting in such a sensitive position. And it's going to be interesting, particularly for me, to see how the DA manages its being in government in cooperation at the national level while being the official opposition. And I'm wondering if they're not having some kind of buyer's remorse in terms of having given up their official opposition title, having seen now how kind of things have landed. I suspect that may have been part of the motivation. But there's also the fact that, political parties do posture and do a lot of kind of wanting more than what they can handle. But part of it may also be that the DA maybe doesn't have capacity and was perhaps, using this idea of wanting more ministries, knowing that the ANC may not give in, so they don't have to actually admit the fact that they don't have capacity. Because I don't understand how they could reject 3 seats when from their own mouths they're saying they wanted 4 seats. So I'm really quite puzzled by why they didn't compromise and take the 3 seats instead of the 4, as Solly himself has articulated. And I'm sure, though, we're going to find out soon. And I really hope that after this, they're going to actually convene some kind of committee that deals with these GNUs and these GPUs and has a communications capacity that will control the flow of information, that will control the timing of information, because part of this instability and anxiety, particularly in terms of investors, but also in terms of the average South African, is that we keep hearing dribs and drabs, and there's a lot of mudslinging happening in the media at the moment that doesn't need to be happening at this level.
I can tell you what the statement by the DA has to say in terms of just justifying, as you ask those questions, speaking about how there will not be functionaries who rubber stamp decisions made by an executive that evidently is intent on keeping us on the edge of the fray. Also speaking about how it's impossible for the DA to be co-opted into government, as they are meant to be power-sharing partners, really just giving us an indication of the wrestling that's been happening behind the scenes. But another aspect that stands out is the big changes in terms of the removal of safety portfolio moved to the office of the Premier. We heard Lesufi speaking quite a lot this evening about the simplicity of the mandate, talking about crime, corruption and lawlessness having to be crushed.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in KZN that safety has also gone to the Premier's office, so I'm not surprised by that move because they've already done it, in KZN. I think that because of the precarious nature of the politics, it's become more important than ever to have whoever is leading the government be responsible, particularly for safety, because any kind of threat of a July 2021 or another such event really has the potential to put South Africa at risk. And if we're thinking about the fact that, we've just witnessed Kenya, young people rising up against the government in terms of taxes, so that might inspire young people in South Africa who are unhappy with unemployment and the many other issues that people complain about to kind of try to do the same or do something similar. And so it makes sense that the Premier would want to have, the safety situation very close to his ear. And I think, it's interesting how he admitted that the province had made some mistakes when it comes to social development, because a lot of NPOs had to shut down, a lot of organizations that provide services that government simply hasn't been able to provide had to shut down because they didn't get funding or they didn't get funding in time. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that relationship is repaired. Also interesting to see that Tasneem seems to have been put back despite some of the scandals and the rumors that came about where her husband was accused of getting tenders from her portfolio and her being in government. And so these are the things that are going to probably be hogging the headlines in the upcoming days if clarity isn't provided around them. And that's why I'm saying, I think, also even with this DA and ANC tussling and the kind of reasons that are being provided, I'm sure the ANC itself could argue that they also will not be bullied by the DA, and they also will not do things as the DA wants, because this is a negotiation, and ultimately the ANC always has the upper hand because of that 40% at the national level and the kind of power that it gives them, because it gives them the ability to promise people things outside of even the provinces and in other kind of parts of government in a way that the DA can't, because they have, you know, half of what the ANC has in terms of the percentage of the vote as per 2024 election results.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that breakdown analysis there, coming from political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng, as we continue, of course, with the reaction on the breaking news story of this evening.